Welcome to Science in Sports. I'm your host, Simon Heidenreich. Today, I'm joined by a guest with a wealth of experience in sports leadership and performance. Paul Clarke has a dual role. He operates his own business called The Leaders Coach and also manages the EU business for VX Sports, a leading sports technology company from New Zealand who have been to the forefront of athlete monitoring since 2009. Born in Ireland and living in Spain, Paul is a retired sportsman and head coach who now helps coaches, managers, and sports leaders optimize performance through better decision making and data driven strategies. VX Sport has been recognized for its innovation, winning the 2021 Irish Enterprise Award for the most innovative sports science monitoring solution. With his deep understanding of both the game and the science behind it, Paul is the perfect person to discuss the power of monitoring in sports. Have fun in the episode. This podcast is presented by Like Me, your partner for social media and online marketing from Weiden, and Praxis im Salzhaus, your contact for physiotherapy and health in Altenstadt. Okay, Paul, thank you very much for your time that
Yeah,
you
no
joined
problem.
me today on my little podcast. Can you please give me a little introduction about yourself?
Okay, so my name is Paul Clarke. I'm from Ireland, but I live in Spain. I live in the island of Mallorca. I'm here since October. So the reason I moved here was for the weather. The weather in Ireland's not so wonderful. So the sun shines here an awful lot more, which is cool. So professionally, what I spend my time doing, there's pretty much right now two things. My background is in performance. So all the performance elements like strength and conditioning, sports science, performance analysis, coaching, gone on to head coaching, but I've parked that for a time. So right now, I spend my time with two different, I guess, parts of my business. Number one is a business called the Leaders Coach, which is me effectively, where I work with leaders in the field of sport to help them develop their leadership capabilities. So a lot of the time it's with people like team managers, head coaches, but also with other people like sports scientists, strength and conditioning people who know that they must develop their leadership skills. That, for example, just being good as a sports scientist is not enough to develop their career. They know they must develop better leadership skills. So that's part of it. Then the second part, which fits nicely with that, is I do some work with an athlete monitoring company called VX Sport from New Zealand. So VX Sport is an athlete monitoring solution. It's a wearable. So if you see them, they to all intents and purposes are GPS devices that sit in an athlete's vest, sits between your shoulders. For many, many years, we did that for outdoor sports, so football, rugby, etc. But now we've developed an innovation where you can use the same device for indoor sports like basketball, ice hockey, handball, etc. So I do some work for those guys to help them develop their product and enhance sales around the world. So that's what
Mhm.
I spend my time doing at the moment.
Okay, thank you for your introduction. Some interesting stuff you're working on at the moment. The reason why I invited you today, you already mentioned it, the monitoring and the importance
Mhm.
of monitoring in sports. And I want to discuss with you a little bit why monitoring matters in sports. What are like key monitoring systems and their impact on the athlete's performance, and also a little bit about the challenges and the best use for the players, but also for the coaching staff and for the sports scientific field. So when we start at the all the way at the beginning, what does monitoring mean? What does it mean, and why is it so important in sports nowadays?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, and when I speak about this to people, monitoring really, to me, is another word for intelligence. So it's gathering ultimately intelligence about your players as individuals, about units within your team, so your defense, your attack, and then your team, your group as an overall whole. So what I mean by that is instead of just getting information, it's taking the information and distilling that into insights and intelligence. So the intelligence piece is that you can get these insights, these little nuggets of wisdom that you can take action on and then improve the performance of the team. So by improving, say, things like your preparations, improving how your processes around preparations, your processes around recovery, etc., etc. So it helps you really, I guess, monitoring, develop intelligence as a result of learning. That's the way I would describe it.
When you look back to your professional career, or even my professional career, it's 7, 8, 9 years back, how did monitoring change over the last couple of years or decades?
Yeah, I would say hugely, Simon. In the sense that when athlete monitoring first became a thing, so when it moved beyond, say, simple things like heart rate monitoring, it actually accelerated quite quickly and almost too quickly. So what I mean by that is that companies like our own and all the other athlete monitoring solutions have teams of people that their only job is to develop the technology. But what can happen is you can fall into the same position as something like Microsoft Excel, where you keep adding on features really, really quickly, but the people using it can't really keep up with that.
Mhm.
So they end up using maybe 10% of the features. So that's one part of it. The other part of it then is that how it's changed is that you can almost have an overload now of information, to the extent that the people that matter, the players and maybe people like the coaching staff, begin to almost reject this a little bit because it's too much. There's too much coming at them, and they can't really distinguish between something that's nice to know and something that's really vital to know. So that's really how it's moved on, and that doesn't mean that that's bad. It's not good. It's not bad. It just is. It's just the way it is right now. So really, what we're in a position now where we can learn vast amounts about any athlete, but our ability to communicate that and our ability to absorb that is still really where it was maybe 6, 8, 10 years ago. So that's maybe the place where we need to really, really focus on, is to help people absorb this, digest this, and take action on the detail that they do have, as opposed to just keep adding on features and features and features.
Yeah. That's the thing I notice here a little bit, that if you have too many options of data you can look at, same as for performance testing on dryland, for example, if you test too much, the volume of data gets so big that you can't find the important stuff anymore. And if you talk to coaches or to physiotherapists after an injury, and you have this massive amount of data, that the important stuff just gets lost in between the lines.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you if you say that you have to know what you can have or what you need, what's really a good use for practical testing, or for the use after the testing in preparing the players for the season, for example.
Yeah, there's actually, there's a principle in engineering, called, it's a very, very simple principle. It's called prepare slowly, act quickly, or act fast. But in sports, with regard to athlete monitoring, we tend to get that the other way around. We see maybe a team or a rival or somebody else in our league that have maybe bought something like VX Sport. We say, oh, we need that. So then you buy it and quite quickly implement it, but never actually spend or invest the time to understand, why do we want this? And if we decide we understand why we want it, what are we going to use it for? So instead of actually investing the time to involve everybody and to actually find out, okay, when we invest in this technology and this monitoring solution, what are we going to focus on? What is really important to us in our context, in our team? So there's in something like VX, for example, or any other solution,
Mhm.
there's hundreds of things you can look at, measurements, metrics, and they're all pretty cool and they all mean something and they're all useful. However, there's still only a certain amount of time every day to bring this to life. So when I say prepare slowly, what I mean is that take the time to sit down and understand what are the big issues and concerns and pains that maybe the coaching staff are feeling? What are the questions they can never quite answer? The same thing with your medical staff, the same thing with your sports science people. And then begin to listen carefully to all of these people and understand, okay, so if I'm able to use this data to help you understand this factor a little bit better, that's useful to you. You would listen to this. Yes, that would be brilliant for me. So for example, with coaching staff, one thing that's kind of useful is to ask them, what keeps you awake at night time? What about your team really bothers you that you can never quite answer? So for example, like one coach that I spoke with said, well, okay, yeah, we always seem to start games very, very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
It's really 5 or 10 minutes into the game before we get into our pace and our rhythm. And at that stage, we could be 1 or 2 goals behind. And it's troublesome, it's problematic. And I can never really understand why. He said, can we look at the first 5 or 10 minutes of the game and look at the data to see what's happening? I said, my response was, well, you don't really need to do that because you can see this. You've identified the issue. So the issue, that's the symptom. The cause of the issue is probably before that. Let's look at your warm-up. Let's measure and monitor your warm-up. And let's see there, is your warm-up, I guess, is it truly preparing the players for performance? So when we did that, what we were able to use the data to show the coaching staff, was to show them that the volume intensity split in the warm-up there was too much volume and too little intensity relative to the demands of the game. So in actual fact, it meant that the players were still only really warming up to the intensity of the match in the first 5 or 10 minutes. So that was why their start was so slow. It was nothing to do with fitness or anything. It was just that the
Yeah.
warm-up needed to change a bit. So as soon as they changed the warm-up to have more intensity versus and a little less volume, things changed then in terms of performance because the guys were ready to go. So it's small things like that, but that's what I mean by really, getting into the detail and really listening to people, really understanding, and showing them that this data is not just something that's cool to know or something that produces a beautiful graph. The purpose of this data is to help you do a better job. It's to help all of us help the players to perform better. So whether you're strength and conditioning, whether you're medical, whether you're a coach, the job of the data is to support you. That's the job. So if we kind of come back to the prepare slow piece, it's investing that time, Simon, to really understand what's important. What are the 2 or 3 things that are really important today? Because if we only focus on 2 or 3 things, then people can absorb that. And they'll,
Yeah.
and then we can move on a little bit at a time. And then it's a phrase I would use is that all we do then is stay a half step ahead of all of these people all of the time. We never take big jumps so that people feel left behind or lost or that they don't understand. Because very often in sport, you'll know this, that people are not really willing to admit that they don't understand something. They would rather say, look at the report and go, oh yeah, that's cool, and throw it away, rather
Yeah.
than say, I don't understand this. What is this? What does this mean? So that's a common thing as well. So it goes back to really almost what we do before we invest in a solution that matters most. That means then you're going to get true value for your investment out the other
Yeah.
side.
What common monitoring tools would you suggest as a former pro player and also a part of a coaching staff to monitor your day-to-day life on a weekly basis in a pro sports team without getting out of hand, without getting too much information which the players or the coaching team isn't able to comprehend everything?
Yeah, I think it just you broke up a little bit there, but I think I got most of your question. I think that really what you've got to do is understand what matters most for us. I go back to that again, and understand, that really understand that whatever monitoring tools you use, they're not necessarily deterministic. Just because you use them doesn't mean you're going to get a very nice result in a box. It doesn't mean that. What it means is that they're probabilistic. They're going to guide you towards better questions. Okay. So there's always a model that I would suggest to people. I call it the 6I model. Okay. So it helps people understand how to use this better. So it's, again, start slowly. So even if you look at something like, like our own solution VX, you might choose 2 or 3 or 4 metrics out of that to focus on that you think matter most to you. So maybe something in ice hockey, like you might look at distance, might look at high force efforts, you might look at skating efforts, that type of thing. Okay. So that gives you a real good insight into the volume that the player's experiencing and the intensity that they're experiencing that at. So once you apply the 6I model to this, now the 6I means there's 6 steps that all begin with I. It's easy to remember. So the first one is inquire. Inquire means really, what's the real question here? What's the very simple question that we're trying to answer? Okay, so go back to what I said there. How can we start games better? That's a really, really succinct question. There's a lot behind that, but it's a really simple question. It's a good start point. It could be, how can we finish games better? How can we have a better substitution strategy? All of that kind of thing. So the second I then is investigate and gain information. So once you've got your question, then you can choose the metrics to start beginning to put together an answer. But that gives you a lot of information. It gives you a big bucket of information, if you like. Then we've got to interrogate that information. So it's really, really position questions and look for patterns in all the information. Look for key things that jump out at us. Look for patterns. Look for trends that repeat themselves. And that then generates your fourth I, which is your insight. Your insight then is the key one or two learnings that you're gaining out of all the information that you've gathered. Okay, so it's not 100% definite, it's just probable. It's probable that this could lead you towards the answer. Then the fifth I is to implement. It's to take those insights and say, okay, what we've learned from all the monitoring and taking all the information is these few insights. Now we're going to implement these changes. So go back to my example about warm-ups, about the start of the game. The guys changed their warm-up based on the insight that the warm-up had too much volume, too little intensity. Okay, so that's the implement. The sixth step then is to involve. And what I mean by involve, Simon, is simple. It means involve everybody, involve the whole performance team. Share this detail with everybody and say, here's what we're doing, here's what we're suggesting we do, and here's why. So what that means for the coaches is this. What this means for the strength and conditioning people is this. What it means for the medical people is this. And then you go back, it's a loop. So then you go back to the start, and whatever action you take, you then inquire again. You ask a good question about that. You go back to investigating more information, get a better insight, implement that better, involve everybody again. And it's just this loop. It's this loop whereby you're just moving towards a better answer all the time. So really what you're doing is you're generating better questions. You're asking better questions all the time. You're gaining better answers. You're taking better actions. So you're moving towards a place where practice is better, performance is better, recovery is better, injury rates are beginning to fall, whatever you're really focusing on. You don't get there in a week or 2 weeks. You just keep taking better steps to get there. And this is the important thing, is that the people that are, I guess, in charge of monitoring and the data, they must be given time to extract patterns, time to develop insights, time to ask better questions, time to involve all the staff. Now, if for example, a team starts that today, it could take that could be 12 or 18 months before we begin to really, really see the true benefits of the data and what it's bringing for you. So that's important. It's that we continue to evaluate, then we continue to validate, evaluate, validate all the time, using that 6I model and looking at monitoring as a real long-term investment, not just in performance, but also in creativity in some ways, because it's generating better ways at looking at issues. And then an investment in innovation. It's not that we're creating anything new, but we're creating better performance. We're helping players develop better. We're understanding our assets better, which is our players, and
Yeah.
helping, I guess, get the most out of those assets for the player, with the player, at all stages. So it's really being patient, and it's developing a culture of continual improvement that's data based. It's involving everybody, the whole performance team. That it's not just for the sports science guys and girls or the strength and conditioning guys and girls with a new toy.
Yeah.
It's for everybody, really. And that's the key thing, is that it's an investment that delivers for everyone. That's when it becomes truly powerful.
Yeah, got it. For sure. You said a lot of interesting and good stuff about the monitoring systems right there. I just noted down two things you mentioned. I want to talk a little bit more about it. First one being your company, or same as for us and my team, we are using monitoring tools. But my question, where I want to really get into a little bit more, if you have data-driven monitoring systems and you have the player feedback, like objective and subjective
Sure.
monitoring, what's for you more important, or is it 50-50? The data doesn't lie, but if you see, okay, a player is still struggling or is still not used to certain motions or movements or whatsoever, what's more important in your eyes?
I think I would attach equal importance. But I'd even go back a step before that, Simon. I think we've got to understand. It sounds very obvious, but we forget it sometimes, that each player, each athlete is unique. And as well
Yeah,
as being a player, they're a person. Okay. So where the objective data is useful is when, for example, they're with us. So they're with you guys on the ice or in the gym, and it tells you what happened there. So that you may have those guys from maybe 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. every day, okay, 5 days a week. So that's 20 hours in the week. But that's 20 hours out of 168 hours, which is not a huge percentage. The subjective stuff begins to help us understand what's going on with their lives in the other 148 hours a week that will have an impact on the 20 hours a week. But again, there's something awfully important here, is that it goes back to what we do before we introduce this, is actually helping players understand that the reason we're doing this monitoring is for them. It's to
yeah,
help them perform better. It's to help them prolong their careers, which then helps them earn more money effectively. That it's not a big brother exercise to beat them up with the data, to say, oh, your distance was only this, and all of that stuff. It's to help them be better. In actual fact, when they understand that the data is a reflection on us as coaches and as strength and conditioning people, then they tend to drop the guard a little bit. Now, why is that important? I'll explain why. That's vital. That's vital, so that the players are honest, that they just
mhm,
don't tell us what we want to hear. Okay. So if they have bad sleep for 2, 3, 4 nights, that they report that, and they feel free to report that. They feel that I can report this, I can be very honest, because the guys aren't going to beat me up about this. It's not a reflection on me being a bad athlete, a bad person, a bad professional. It just is. So then they understand that we can then take that detail and begin to understand what's happening on the ice or on the field or on the court a little bit better, so that we can help adjust things for those people, those athletes. So it's really, I guess, the two things to me are equally important, but they're only as important as, I guess, the level of honesty that's attached to the subjective. You know, the wellness stuff, the wellness questions, the RPE questions, and also the reliability of the data that's coming from the ice or the court or the field, that we can blend the two together and get a good, get a good signpost. Okay. So it's a little bit like going on a journey. You can have a map of the journey, but the map doesn't tell you the terrain. So equally well, when we use
Yeah,
the data, it's almost like getting a map. But then that helps us have a good conversation with the athlete, with the person, and say, look, it looks like maybe, you know, you're maybe just feeling a little bit tired. Things aren't, you know, you're not sleeping well. Could you help me understand why? And how can we help you? How can we help you over this situation, this issue, whatever it might be? Okay, so for example, you know, these players, they might be having some trouble at home. They might have something, they could be something like a new baby, which is going to obviously affect sleep and mood and all of these kind of things.
for
They could
sure.
be moving house. It could be a young player that's moved from country like, say, Czechoslovakia or Canada to your country in Germany. It could be the first time they've ever left home. They may have never even been on an aeroplane before.
Yeah,
So all of these things are important as context underneath, so that we can understand the person at a deep level, so that we can help them perform better. Because there's no question that they're good performers, they're good athletes. What we're trying to do with the data is get rid of all the obstructions, so they can then just express their potential better. So I think that's the real value of the objective and the subjective and blending it together. It's not to get more information. I go back to the 6I model. It's to get real insight, that we can say, look, it looks like, because we can never say anything 100%. But the conversations we can have with coaching staff, with players, is that, look, it looks like this is the situation. Am I correct? Am I incorrect? And then get into it, you know, get into a deeper level with them, which means then we're really creating a great relationship, great relationships between all the functions within the team. So your coaches, your medical, your strength and conditioning, your sports science, and that all of those are developing great relationships with your players, because the players understand that everything you're saying is to help them be better, is to help the team be better. It's not just to prove a point. It's not to have sexy data. It's to help things be better. It's to help get a better result for everybody. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yes, for sure. Especially also, like you mentioned, with the challenging aspect attached to it. You don't know what's going on in their personal life or traveling stuff maybe. And what I think is also a big component to the long-term success in a professional team is that you, if you have a monitoring solution like we just discussed, um, to use it effectively, but without losing the human touch to it. The relationship between coaches and players should still be maintained if possible. And yeah, like I said, it's a challenging thing, I guess. You as a
Yeah.
former coach, how do you manage this?
Yeah, it's I think it kind of comes back to what we spoke at the very start, and what I do now in one part of my business is really helping people in sport become better leaders. So, and that doesn't mean that it's just, as I said, it just doesn't mean that I work with the head coach, because everybody within a sporting environment has to be a better leader, because effectively they have a lot of followers, which are the players, the athletes,
Yeah,
and they want to be led. They want leaders. So you could have leader in your title, like you could be the head coach, and of course you're a leader. But as a sports scientist, as a strength and conditioning coach, you still have to have leadership skills. And it's understanding then the biggest, one of the biggest parts of leadership is that before you find yourself, before you try to get people to understand you, you must understand them, because you can only be a leader if there are people following you. Otherwise, you can't be one.
yeah,
So you must understand them and understand what they need, their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their limitations, all of these kind of things, so as that you can then help them improve in all of those areas. And if they feel that, you know what, this guy is in my corner, this guy really, really wants to help me, they'll come with you. They'll just keep coming with you because there'll be a connection, and out of that connection, there's trust. And once you develop that trust across all the functions, so with the players and also with your other colleagues, then you can use all of these data-based insights to have better conversations. And again, if we revisit that 6I model that I created, it's to help involve. Involve is the thing, because this sounds very, very obvious, Simon, but we're a team. And being a team means involving everybody. It means leaving nobody behind. So you can't have a situation where, the coaching staff are in one silo, the strength and conditioning staff, the medical staff, the sports science
Yeah.
staff, performance analysis, and they never really come together. They've got to be this function that comes together as one and moves together as one, and that the players can see that. And then once everyone sees that, and that's leadership, that's true leadership in action. It's easy to write down all the lines and all the words and all these kind of things. That's easy, and put words on the walls. But really, the good teams, they make things happen. It's their actions. It's not the words on the walls. It's not the slogans. It's not the quotations. It's their actions. And that's the important thing that comes out of all of this, is that the best reason for investing in something like data and monitoring is to help you take better actions, to help you be a better team, a better overall team, and a better team of teams within the club or within the organization. That's the true benefit.
You think it's possible to have individual success in a professional club or team without the stuff you just mentioned, like the little bubbles of relationships coming together and working together as one big team or family in kind of.
I think if if you're a really big, rich club in any sport, you can almost buy in talent that will keep you
Yeah, yeah,
consistently successful. But that's maybe one or two teams in every league, in every sport. Everybody else then has to really look at inside themselves and kind of go, how can we be smarter? So I think what I'm saying here may not deliver success immediately. But what it does help you do, it helps you keep improving everything week after week after week until you get to the point where you become consistently successful. And the key word there is consistently. It means, and the reason you're consistently successful is that there's a nice cohesion between all of the performance team, all the groups of the performance team, between the players, between the ownership of the club, the hierarchy of the club. Everybody is working together. Everybody understands each other. Everyone understands where we're going and how we're going to get there. So this cohesion, it's like a glue almost that binds everything together. That means once we start achieving success, it's because of our processes and the way we work together. And then you have a consistency. Now, when I say success, that's relative success, because only one team a year can win the championship or the cup or whatever it might be. But everybody can have relative success. So, for example, I think your club achieved promotion. They try now to consolidate. So you have a vision of what success is year after year after year for you. Okay, it's not to the exclusion of winning. It doesn't mean you don't try to win something. Of course you do, but it's relative success. And it's understanding that if we keep doing this for a long period of time, this is going to deliver good results for us.
Yeah.
Our chances of success rise exponentially.
Yeah, in the best case scenario, like you said, in a long-term development or success, you really work together with, obviously you have players who leave the club or you have new players joining the club.
Yeah.
But in the best case, you have a team, even starting with the youth teams, who you can work together over a couple of years, maybe even longer, to really build the relationships, build the trust. Because, like you said, without the trust in the staff team, it's hard to really get behind the players' wall, or the players. You know what I mean by
Yeah, for
that.
sure. Yeah,
So
I do.
you
Yeah,
can
I mean,
really
it's
work with
it's
them. He listens to you, and yeah, I mean, it's important for me in my team to have a good relationship, like I just said, with all my players, even in the youth teams, who I work with a couple of times in the week, just to have or give them the opportunity to reach me and to really trust me in that regard, because I'm a strength and conditioning coach here. And if without having their trust, it's really hard to work with 25 pro guys and up to 20, 30, 40 youth players. So I'm really behind what you said. And before I want to wrap up this really interesting episode with you about the importance of monitoring, you brought up, with your knowledge and your experience, you brought a lot of really good insights and valuable information to the table today. Um, can you give me your final thoughts on monitoring? What's your number one tip for upcoming sports scientists, for strength coaches who just started in pro sports, about or regarding monitoring systems? So, just like you said, a loop back around to the beginning of our episode. What's your number one tip for sports scientists, sports professionals, leaders in sports regarding monitoring?
Yeah, I think there's probably a few things, but they're quite related. I would say to anyone that's introducing monitoring to look at it for as a long-term project. Number one, number two, take your time. Don't. It's a bit like having a big meal in front of you. You don't try and eat it all in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So equally, when you buy a monitoring solution, even though there are hundreds of things you can measure, don't just pick out the two or three or four things that are really, really important. So that, and to do that, you have to do the preparation work. So you have to involve everybody first to say, okay, what's useful? What's useful for us? Not interesting, what's useful? What can we take action with? What issues and problems do we want to try and fix in the next 2 or 3 months? We can't fix everything, but what are the one or two big things that if we helped address those issues, that would make a big difference to us? So for the individual sports scientist or strength and conditioning coach, it's really important to be useful. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not useful in what you're doing, but what I mean is display to the coaching staff, to the medical staff, to all your colleagues in the performance team, that what you're trying to do is help everybody be better. So that's what I mean about being useful, and that's having those conversations. So before you even take a monitoring device and switch it on even once, have those conversations and say, okay, what would be really, really useful for you? How can I be useful to you with the data and the insights that I bring to you? What problem can I solve for you? So I would say those few things there is take your time at the start, ask all the right questions, understand why you want this. Because the truth is, Simon, unless you understand why and what difference this is actually going to make, when you go to look for the money to invest in this from the people who are the administrators of the club,
Hmm.
they won't give you the money. There's never money for more toys, but there is money. There's always budget for better performance.
Yeah.
And if you can have an educated conversation with these people to say, we want to invest in this solution because we want to get insights into A, B, and C. Why? Because it's going to help us with these actions, which helps with preparations, which improves performance. So you're drawing a straight line between the investment and improved performance. You're not just investing the money because the club down the road has it or some of your great rivals have it. You show that you have a level of thought. Now, what that does for the individual sports scientist or strength and conditioning coach is that professionally, it puts you on a different level. You're not just somebody who does cool and sexy reports or writes programs. You're somebody who thinks at a higher level about the overall performance of the whole club in the next week, in the next month, in the next year, in the next 5 years. So that's the real benefit. So I would say start slow, involve everybody, ask great questions, and just take your time. Take your time, slow down, because it's really tempting to go very, very fast with this stuff.
But it's the same with the strength and conditioning approach. You don't get better results, better players in a week. You have to really be behind it, work with them. And then after a couple of months, in this case, you will see the positive results, hopefully positive. And then you can build on. And then, like you said, make the players better. I think that should be the number one goal for each person working in a club or affiliated with the club. And then it gets easier by time.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's correct.
Yeah. One last question about you and your work. Where can the listeners learn more about monitoring and learn more about you as a person? And maybe is there a possibility to reach you about monitoring systems?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So if they want to check out our monitoring system, they can look at the VX Sport website. It's www.vxsport.com. So you can also see that on LinkedIn. There's a VX Sport LinkedIn page where we put up all about features and innovations and et cetera, et cetera. So you can contact through that. You can connect with me on LinkedIn myself. Paul Clarke is my name. If you pop that into LinkedIn, it's probably more geared towards the leaders coach, which is the other aspect of what I do right now. That's the bit that I'm trying to grow individually myself. So you'll find me on LinkedIn there. You find me on Twitter or X, as it's called now. My handle there is at P Clarke Perform, PCLARKE PERFORM. So you find me there as well. So, or if you're interested in more insight into leadership skills, my own website is www.theleaders.coach. So that's so I can send you all of those anyway. You can post them on the show notes.
Yep, I will tag you and all your platforms in the description. Paul, thank you very much for your insights to bring your experience, your knowledge on the table today with me. I learned a lot, and also I think I have some metrics, some variables I want to check out myself in the upcoming days and weeks with my players. You have anything else you want to talk about, or?
No. I think we covered a lot there. Sometimes you can go into too much detail, and that's
Yes.
exactly what I said there in the podcast. Is just take your time. I mean,
Yeah.
we could probably talk for another hour about all of the cool metrics and all of the things that are useful, but I think it's just important for everybody before they move on to that to just really, really understand what earns you the right to move on to that. So you can do
Yeah.
all that work on the ground really powerfully. And it's the work you do in advance. That's the key thing.
Sounds good. I like that. Yes. So thank you very much for your time. I wish you all the best, and I hope we stay in touch
Yeah, for
for
sure.
some further conversations, further talks. And yeah, with that being said, thank you. I wish you all the best,
Thanks. Good
and I'll
talking to
talk
you.
to you in a bit.
Super.
Thank you. That's it for this episode of Science and Sports. If you enjoyed my podcast, please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Your feedback is very important to me, so I look forward to your ratings and comments on your favorite podcast platform. Feel free to share the podcast with friends, colleagues, and anyone interested in sports science, athletics, performance, and health. Together, we can inspire even more people about this exciting topic.